hits the far wall, sloshes its way back, and brings those tanks with it as a counterbalance, which means it balances out most of the sway it gives the wind all by itself. It's a very cool and kind of confusing method of sway reduction. So if you don't get it, don't worry. The next two we'll talk about are easier to understand if you're not an engineer. But this building is also a great example of what contemporary style buildings look like. Got another example coming up on the left. Bank of America building. Had to keep the Riverwalk free for the Riverwalk project. But you don't have to miss out on that space anymore thanks to technology. You can now vault the third floor of your building with steel I-beams, cover them up with stainless steel, go all the way to the top of your lot with no issues, and look really good doing it too. A great example of what modern architecture is all about, technology. Doing things with that tech you couldn't do until more recently. Gives you an idea of how that's pushing us into the future. But on this next section of the tour, we're going back in time instead, talking about how architecture has evolved alongside history. Now, following the fire in the 1880s, we rebuilt our city with revivalism, copying and pasting European designs like the Wrigley Building. In the mid-1920s, we switched over to Art Deco style. Great examples on either side of the river. When we're making Art Deco buildings in the Roaring 20s, we're looking optimistically to the future. Life's great in the 20s, so what could go wrong by pouring all your money and resources into a single building? I'll give you an idea. Left-hand side, Civic Opera Building, opened 2 weeks after the stock market crashed in 1929. Only made it for 3 years before it went bankrupt. So, the Great Depression comes along and cut short the Art Deco party. Shortly after that comes World War II. So there's a big break in building from the 30s and the 50s, but when we start building afterwards, buildings look a lot different than Art Deco. Coming up on the right are two giant black steel boxes, modernist buildings from the 1950s. After World War II, there's a big return to the workforce, so we need office buildings quick to accommodate that. Mies van der Rohe takes architecture back to its three most basic building blocks: skeleton, skin, and space. That's all you need. The skeleton's the steel aluminum frame that hold these buildings up. They wear their structure right on their sleeve. They're office buildings, so they're all business. They're not trying to wow you in the same way Art Deco does. They just gotta be functional. That also means the skin, which was the decoration of Art Deco, isn't necessary here. It's just floor-to-ceiling windows in this case. And the space refers to the plazas that surround them. Now, these are functional buildings, but the design is not very human. So the plazas are where you can enjoy your lunch, be around nature, feel like more than a cog in the machine. That's the psychological effect of space. There's no agenda behind it. It allows room for you to exist as you are. The next jump in architecture is a pretty big one. You ready? We go from black boxes in the 60s to white boxes in the 70s. That's international style. You can pull it out of any place in the world in the 70s. Architecturally, almost no change. We're pretty much the same. The biggest difference is behind the scenes, why we're making each style. We're no longer sticking out in order to be functional. We are now fitting in with a global scheme of architecture. And fitting in continues as an idea into the 80s, which is when contextualism doubles down on fitting in. We've got another great example, this curved glass building ahead on the right. Now, contextualist buildings are the most important style of architecture. Because if you're not careful, all of these different styles will make your city feel more like buildings than a city. They're all competing for your individual attention, like Art Deco does. You lose sight of the big picture, but you forget your context. And so contextualist buildings actively
You say you want to join that uni?
To collaborate instead of compete.
See you then
By
next
emphasizing
year.
their community, they blend all the styles together and create neighborhoods in place of buildings. That's why it's so important. And alive and well. But contemporary style architecture is not just about tech. It's using that tech to remix old styles. We got a great example coming up on the left. Modernist building added a "You Are Here" map to the sign 2014. After the bridge, you can draw your eyes up, see a red box sticking out of it. That's where we are in the river. If you look up past that, you can also see the literal Y of Wolf Point, where the three branches meet. It really does make a Y on a map like that. Aaron Montgomery Ward, its founder, who grew up poor. His first job was in a warehouse, making 25 cents an hour. So when he grew up to become a salesman himself, he empathized with a lot of poor farmers getting taken advantage of in the marketplace in the mid-1800s. During that time, there was a lot of middlemen, jacking up all their prices. So he sought to get around all that, sell directly to the people. And to do that, he invented an entirely new system of business called the mail order catalog system. Now, I do see some young faces on this board, probably born post internet. In that case, a mail order catalog is a giant bookload of items. Get sent to your house, circle what you want, send it back. This was basically Amazon, 120 years before Amazon was doing it. Revolutionary stuff. Now, despite how great it is, because they're in the small little houses next to bridges, the bridge houses, like Kinsey Street's cute little yellow house here, that gives you an idea of how much weight is hidden in those little houses. It's a lot more than you think. And on the left here, we got my favorite downtown apartments, the River Cottages, built by Harry Weese, 1988. This is postmodernism style architecture, very fun and playful designs from the 1980s. The porthole windows and triangle designs are a nod and wink to the boats and their sails you can find around here. As I mentioned, prior to the 80s, we've been building boxes for 30 years. So some architects are breaking out of that box, not even trying to fit in. That's where postmodernism comes into play. Now, these are not just clever designs, they're also revolutionary, because these face the river. And in the 80s, you didn't want to do that, especially not the North Branch. This was a pretty dirty river back there. A more common view to have at that time is that of the East Bank Club on the right. This is a gym. Pardon me, no it's not. It's a high-end fitness facility. $500 for the activation fee, $250 a month after that. But if you pay, you're in good company. Oprah, Obama, Michael Jordan, Billie Jean King, they all work down here. But specifically, these windows weren't added until the late 90s, about a decade after the River Cottages moved in. Made it cool to face the river. Before that, had its back turned. Didn't want to see the river, didn't want to smell it, didn't want anything to do with it. It's a very common view to have of the river back in the day. Now, a decade or two after that, on the left, you get the Kinsey townhomes. 70 townhomes along the Riverwalk. And in fact, each and every one of these townhomes sold for $1.2 million before ground had even broke on construction. There was just the promise of being along the river in the early 2000s, and people ate that up. Nowadays, these sell for about $3 to $4 million a pop. Gives you an idea of how the attitudes of the river are changing, and how the real estate of the river is changing too. And it goes to prove that other point about us not really living downtown. I can guarantee it's not tour guides living in these $3 to $4 million townhomes. So you got to look for where the tour guides live if you want that nightlife. The good news is, I bet there are some tour guides. On the right-hand side here, this neighborhood is called River North. And of all the neighborhoods in the city, it's got the highest concentration of entertainment and restaurant venues of any of them. It goes all the way up to the Wrigley Building where we end the tour, so it's a very convenient downtown nightlife option. Two of the bigger streets, among many, are Hubbard and Clark. You'll find high concentration of bars, clubs, restaurants, live music up and down both of those streets. A lot of that's open till 2 o'clock in the morning. On Hubbard Street, a 3-minute walk from where we end the tour, is Andy's Jazz. That's live jazz music while you're getting something to eat. That's also a family-friendly venue, which means anybody can go. If you're looking for maybe the more adult version of that, smoky Prohibition-era bar with live blues, that's on Clark Street, the Blue Chicago. Live blues typically starts at 9 p.m. on the weekends. If you are interested in that Prohibition-style experience, there's a bar on North Orland Street called the Green Door. In the basement of the Green Door, there's a second bar called the Drifter. That's the speakeasy. That's under the real bar up top. So again, if you're looking for that experience, you got options for that too. And since we got a little bit of time, Steaks and Seafood Shaw's on Hubbard Street, just beyond Andy's Jazz that I mentioned. So another like 3-4 minute walk. Like I said, those are just some different recommendations for River North. I got plenty of other ones, and we got another break coming up in just a moment. So if you do have questions or need refreshers, come find me during that break. Now, in the meantime, on the other side of this bridge, we got a nice little park here on the right-hand side. This is known as Ward Park. Beyond it, slowly coming into view, we've got a glass building with a cement edge on the left-hand side, just beyond that water tower behind the trees. That is known as the Montgomery. You put those two together, they get Montgomery Wards, which is the name of the company, very prominent in this area way back in the day. It's named after, I got asked last year where to find a salad. Sorry, I don't think you can. Try the West Coast. But we will start as light as it gets here in the city with a snack. Chicago-style popcorn. It's cheesy popcorn mixing with caramel corn. Like most Chicago-style things, it might not sound good. It's not good. It's fantastic. The place to go is Garrett's. It's a franchise, multiple spots throughout the city. You're gonna smell the caramel corn? Wow. You're gonna smell that caramel corn a couple blocks out. So follow your nose, trust it, get some Garrett's. If you're asking about deep dish, you ask 10 of Chicagoans who's got the best, you get 10 different answers. So here's my personal, unofficial opinion. If you like sauce or crust, Illuminati's. If you like cheese, Giordano's. If you like sausage, Pisano's. You can go to Gino's East, but I haven't personally figured out why you can go to Gino's East. There's also Pizzeria Uno and Due, the inventors of deep dish in River North. That's about a 5-minute walk from where we end the tour on Wabash Street if you want to try the original. But no matter where you're getting deep dish from, it takes 45 minutes when you order it to come out the oven. It's a very long process. So if you're already hungry, get a Chicago-style hot dog. These are the exact opposite of deep dish. Doesn't matter where you go. You're just looking for a Vienna beef sign, be it a stand or a restaurant or the Home Depot. Some people say the Home Depot's got the best Chicago dog. We put a lot of ingredients on them: tomatoes, onions, pickles, peppers, celery, salt, relish. But there's one thing you never find on a Chicago dog. If you know it, shout it out. A resounding ketchup. Love to hear it. Mustard only in the city. You put ketchup on your hot dog, that's a misdemeanor. You take that seriously. So brought that off the bump. Mustard works better. Try it out. But my favorite Chicago delicacy, truly by far, is an Italian beef sandwich. We cook shredded beef in a crock pot, put that on a sandwich. You then dip the sandwich back into the crock pot juice. That's called dipped, and I highly recommend you get it that way. You can put mild, sweeter hot peppers on top. I put mozzarella cheese on the bottom so it's nice and melting. Ooh, getting hungry talking about it. Riccobenni's, 22nd Street, Chinatown. Best Italian beef sandwich I've had. There's a pretty close second in Elmwood Park called Johnny's, but it's a bit of a trek for both of those. So if you want something downtown, not too far from where we end the tour's Mr. Beef. They film part of the bear in Mr. Beef. And the franchises are Al's and Portillo's, multiple spots in the city. From where we end, it's a 15-minute walk to Portillo's, which is hot dogs and Italian beef sandwiches. But no matter where you go or what you eat, main thing to keep in mind in general when you visit Chicago is this. If you visit our city and you don't gain at least 5 pounds while you're here, you're not eating Chicago-style food right. So loosen up that belt a couple notches, try some Chicago-style food. I was 130 pounds when I moved here. Just broke 200 pounds this winter, pure Italian beef. So if you're hungry for something that I didn't mention, steak, seafood, Italian, I might have a recommendation. Go find. Now, in front of us, we got a bridge suspended over the river. This is the Carroll Ave Railway Bridge. Now, it used to allow trains to the area, but there's no tracks anymore. So it just comes down once a year to make sure it still works. But we still have 38 movable drawbridges in Chicago. The most in the U.S., second most in the world behind Amsterdam, actually. And our bridges are known all throughout the world, too. They're uniform in style. They're Chicago-style, double-leaf, trunnion bascule bridges. There's a lot there. Double-leaf means they open in 2 parts, separating from the middle, at least typically. These are single-leaf bridges in front of us. They move in 1 part instead of 2. Trunnion just describes the relationship of the bridge to the river. And bascule is Latin for seesaw, or teeter-totter. That's how we move them. On this bridge, you can see a giant cement slab hanging off the back. That's the counterweight that's required to move it up and down. It is 3 times the weight of the bridge itself. That's true of all of our bridges, as long as they still move. You just don't typically see those massive counterweights with staggered heights. And that's what they went with. 9 structures, like the 9 cigarettes. The top 2 sway the most, but it's got 7 structures around those 2, bundling together to hold them in place. It's harder to move 9 than 1. There's strength in numbers. That's the general premise of a bundled tube design. To break that down a little different, that means the Sears Tower is built to sway, and you could sometimes feel it. On a normal day, the average sway of the Sears Tower's about 6 inches. Sounds like a lot, but typically you can't feel that. On our windiest day, Sears Tower can sway up to 18 inches any direction, a total of 3 feet. You can feel that, especially on the elevator ride up. So keep in mind, if you feel that building move, it's built that way. Don't freak out too much. And if you don't feel that, some sickos don't feel the building move and it's not good enough for them, they want to. Go in the bathroom of the sky deck. The toilet water's doing this. It's wild. And if you really want to freak yourself out, you draw your eyes up the side of the building, you can see 5 glass boxes attached to the side and the undersides of people's feet in those glass boxes. Could be your feet. That's the ledge. An add-on to the sky deck, so you can also do the sky deck without doing the ledge. Keep that in mind too. Now, some people ask which is better, the sky deck from the Sears or the 360 from the Hancock building, our 2 main observation decks. We're going to quickly break down both. The sky deck here's the tallest. It's also the furthest removed from the city, which means every building you're looking for is out the north side. If you're going for the skyline photo, the sky deck's the better option. That also means out the 3 sides that don't have the skyline, not a whole lot to see. I grew up in Indiana, trust me, you don't want to see Gary, Indiana at the top of the Sears Tower. Not a lot going on there. The Hancock Building's more centrally downtown, so you don't get that one skyline put out at any side, but you do see something interesting out each and every side. So if you want to see more of Chicago, you can see more from the 360. Those are your trade-offs. The only other trade-off is those glass boxes. The Ledge, Skydeck exclusive. The 360 instead has a row of windows called the tilt. You stand looking outside of it, they hydraulically tilt you 30 degrees looking towards the ground. So no matter which one you choose, you can terrify yourself at either one. And the even better news is, best view of the skyline, perfectly free. It's not an observation deck. It's the Adler Planetarium, Museum Campus. You don't need tickets to go into the Adler. Just head out to Museum Campus Peninsula, turn around, look back, every building you're looking for in one nice photo. So if you want to skip our observation decks and the line and price tag that come with them, just head out to Museum Campus. Now the neighborhood on the right here is called the Loop. It is where our elevated train track, the L for short, loops together. That makes it our central hub of transportation and offices. Now there is an okay theater district for musicals, off-Broadway shows, but the problem is zero nightlife. It's where our offices are. So after 5 p.m. or on a weekend, it's abandoned. They all hop on the train, go home. If you do want to see a show, have a nightlife after, preemptively, hop on the Brown Line here, head up to Old Town, see a Chicago improv show instead. That's what we're known for. We already created comedy on the spot. The famous institution in Old Town is the Second City. All sorts of hilarious alumni come from there, like Bill Murray, Tina Fey, Chris Farley, Steve Carell, Amy Poehler, Jason Sudeikis, me. We're not all Bill Murray, but shows are happening nightly, and last call in Old Town's like 4 o'clock in the morning. So again, if you're looking for nightlife, Old Town has it. But the main thing everyone can and should do while you're visiting to integrate with the locals is try some Chicago-style food. So we're going to break down some of your options on this next section here. Initial disclaimer, all Chicago-style food, incredibly heavy. Call it that because at night those circles light up. Steals all the attention off the king behind it. But we learned recently, those lights are actually a little too powerful for their own good. They have a tendency to mess up the migration patterns of birds. They think that middle one's the moon when it's all lit up. So several times a year we have to dim these lights intentionally to make sure birds passing through Chicago don't get very lost and confused on their way north or south. The other reason I call that the Queen is because the top of that building is meant to look like the architect's wedding ring. That's a permanent proclamation of love for his wife. Keep that in mind, ladies. He's not building you a building, he's not doing enough in my opinion. Now to the right of that, around the edge of the reed here in just a moment, we're going to see an Art Deco style building with a triangle roof and a single silver statue on top of that. This is the Chicago Board of Trade building, and the statue on top is Ceres, the Roman goddess of agriculture. That's C-E-R-E-S, same Latin root as cereal or cerveza. Yeah, that's that silver statue on top of that triangle roof. Now, back when this was built in the late 1930s, early 1930s, tallest building in Chicago. It's true. Held that record for 30 years. Also true. But sometimes those two facts get stretched into this story about how the architect never thought buildings would be taller than it. So he didn't bother carving the face into a statue. No one's going to get close enough to see. Fun story. Believable too. I told it for 6 years. Just found out last year. Not true at all. The real reason that statue doesn't have a face is because that's not the style of Art Deco. For example, think of the Oscar statue. Now imagine how creepy that guy would look with the face. Weird. They leave it blank intentionally. That's the style of Art Deco. It's more about geometric shape than detail. But it's still a cool fact it's faceless. And if you go up in the Skydeck, we'll talk about in a moment, you can very clearly tell it doesn't have one. And the Skydeck isn't our tallest building. That black building with white antenna on top, the king of Chicago's skyline, the Sears Tower. First thing I gotta mention, I know, it's not officially called the Sears anymore. Its real name is the Willis. Had a name change 2009 when the Willis Group bought it, but not a single Chicagoan calls it that. You ask for directions to the Willis Tower, dead giveaway you're a tourist. You're not a tourist, remember? You're a Chicagoan in training. So, no matter what that name gets changed to, and it will be changed again in 2029, the naming rights go up for bid. Unless that new name is the Sears, I wouldn't even learn it. That's the Sears. Always will be here in Chicago. And the reason we're so stubborn, back when it was built in 1974, not just the tallest building in Chicago, or even America, this was the tallest building in the world. held that record for 23 years into the 90s. It is now the third tallest in America, although that's sadly because those antennae don't count anymore. They have Wi-Fi, radio, cell signals, which disqualifies them from your architectural tip these days. Same antenna, no technology. Those aren't antennae. Those are spires. Spires still count. All that to say, we're down about 300 feet on a technicality, bringing us from the second tallest down to the third. We're still top 3. We don't care. We take it. Great picture of our king and our queen coming up on the right following the bridge. And also from this angle, you can see the stair-step look of the Sears Tower as it goes up. That is our second method of reducing the sway of your building. And it's still the standard for tall buildings everywhere. The Burj Khalifa in Dubai, world's tallest, does that same thing. And the Sears here was the very first to do it. It is called a bundled tube design. The two guys that designed it, Bruce Graham and Dr. Fazlur Khan, sat down to talk about what it should look like in a diner. So no pencil or paper to sketch anything out. What they did have was Bruce Graham cigarettes. So they pulled 9 cigarettes out of the package, bundled them together, placed in all 37 neighborhoods, each with their own unique style, taste, and flair. So there's a little bit of something for everybody. But the main thing they have, the main thing you're probably interested in, is our nightlife. Most people visit Chicago expect us to be New York. The city doesn't sleep? Not true. Chicago's the city of the bedtime at 8 p.m. Try to go out tonight, you'll see what I mean. It's hard to know what to do. And that's because we work downtown, but we don't live downtown. It's too expensive. We go out to neighborhoods to eat, sleep, drink, play. So that's where the nightlife is too. If you want a nightlife, you might have to venture out and find some of these neighborhoods. Now I want to give you a neighborhood at first that has a really good daytime as well as nightlife. It's just a great one in general to check out. Lincoln Park to the north. Now during the day, you get Lincoln Park Zoo. That's one of 3 free zoos in America. Right next to that's the Lincoln Park Conservatory. It's like a zoo but for plants, also free. There are nature walking trails, North Ave Beach, so you can spend most of your day in Lincoln Park doing really fun stuff without paying any money at all. But if you do stick around after the zoo closes, you get a pretty good nightlife in Lincoln Park too. There's the Kingston Mines, one of the best spots to hear blues music in the city of Chicago. If you're more into punk rock, there's a bar called Delilah's. Over 1,000 whiskeys on tap at that one. And my favorite rooftop bar is actually in Lincoln Park. It's on top of the Hotel Lincoln called the J. Parker. You get beautiful views of the skyline, Lincoln Park, and killer cocktails. So if you want that elevator perspective, it might be worth a check up there. Now if you are looking for something a little bit more downtown in terms of rooftop bars, your 2 big options. Right across the street from where we end the tour is the London House. That was ranked 2nd best rooftop bar in America a couple years ago. And if you can't get in there, don't worry, that's not my favorite. It's just a couple blocks south on Michigan Avenue, Cindy's, above the Athletic Association, overlooks Grant Park, Michigan Avenue. You can go up for drinks, food, or neither. They'll just let you out there for the view. So that's another great option downtown. If you're interested in something a little bit more off the beaten path in terms of neighborhoods, our hipster neighborhoods are to the west. The further west you go, the more hipster they get. There's one immediately across the river called West Loop that we'll see a little bit later on this next section of the tour. That's not very hipster at all, but you do get a lot of Chicago-specific coffee shops and bars and breweries with outdoor patios. So if the sun continues, it's a great spot to grab a bite to eat or drink, sit outside for a little bit, soak up that sun. If you continue west, there's a nice little happy medium of Wicker Park. Wicker like the chair. That is our thrift shopping capital. If you want to do any thrift shopping while you're here in the city, Wicker Park is a must visit. They got vinyl record stores, small businesses, great place to eat and drink up and down Milwaukee Avenue. A lot of those places to drink are novelty experiences, like Emporium, which is an arcade bar. There's a mini golf bar. You want to do something fun while you're drinking, Wicker Park will have that solution. And it's gone a little mainstream in recent years too. So if it's not hipster enough for you, 2 extra stops in the Blue Line will get you out to Logan Square. Now that's a little bit more residential. It's actually where I currently live. But it's a great feel of what it's like to actually live in a Chicago neighborhood where most of us live, aside from the downtown stuff. And you'll find even more bars and speakeasies on Milwaukee Avenue again. So if you do head to the west side of Milwaukee Avenue, one of those big streets to keep in mind. Now, I'll have at least 1 or 2 more neighborhoods that I'll try and sprinkle in throughout the tour so you have lots of options. But if you need refreshers of anything that I mentioned like that, or additional directions, suggestions for other neighborhoods, I got plenty of ones that I can't squeeze into the tour. Make sure you ask questions during those upcoming breaks so I can point you the right way. But first, we got some iconic buildings to break down, starting with this one coming up on the right-hand side. These are River City Apartments, the same architect as Marina City, Bertrand Goldberg. Thought they looked familiar? Good call. There was originally going to be 4 of these, sort of weaving their way down this section of the river, but one's all we ever got around to building. They also have the same price tag for the studios and 1 bedrooms. So this is another affordable downtown lease. Doesn't have the same amount of amenities. There's a daycare in the bottom section and still a marina. But at this point, we've seen those black box modernist buildings by Mies van der Rohe. Bertrand Goldberg here was a student of Mies van der Rohe. Clearly not all of his students agreed with the style of architecture. In fact, Bertrand Goldberg went on the record and said, "There's no right angles in nature, so you'll find no right angles in my buildings either." That's why we end up with these bowed designs. They're meant to resemble petals of a flower. He's trying to integrate the nature that surrounds his buildings within the harsh concrete they're made of, which I think is kind of admirable. It's almost like contextualism a decade or 2 before it caught on, creating a better relationship between the spaces in which people live and their environment by blending the two in design. It's kind of a noble thing, I think. In front of us is a building made of pink Texas granite, green circles at the top there. That's 311 South Wacker, the queen of Chicago skyline. A spring lift, but if you do come back in the fall, look that up. It's kind of a cool process. You also may notice, over 18th Street Bridge, the tops of a lot of buildings. We get some beautiful skyline photos as we head back up the South Branch. So we're going to be taking our first break of a couple, so you can snag some of those skyline photos without missing a beat of the tour. Now, a couple of things about those photos. A lot of them will be at the front of the building. Feel free to congregate there. Just please leave the stairways free, so people can come and go up and down if they got to use the restroom, grab a drink during this next section. It's an ideal moment to do all of that without missing any of the tour, or to ask me a question. I'll be making the rounds. If you have those, hey Jack, raise your hand, flag me down. I'm happy to answer those. Or come find me at my little seat if I retreat here. We'll answer some photos, snag some, answer some questions, snag some photos. And when we get closer to the heart of the city, we'll talk about culture. We'll start with some iconic buildings, then our observation decks, Chicago-style food options. It's my favorite part of the tour. So stay tuned. since there were too many questions, I'll go ahead and tack on some extra recommendations. Make sure you get more than your money's worth here today. And I want to give you guys a recommendation that I give to anybody who visits our city, which is to get out and see our neighborhoods. Now, I want to be clear. It's nothing against downtown. It's very beautiful. But I think if you only stay downtown, you're missing out on a whole different side of what Chicago has to offer. Like I said, we've got 7. This is the Burnham Plan. It's an urban city plan that lays the groundwork for everything we've built since. The main thing that plan does is actively preserve public parks. Our city's motto was Urbs and Orto. That means city and a garden. Thanks to the Burnham Plan actively preserving them, we now have over 600 public parks in city limits, 19 miles of lakefront trail, 24 public beaches. If Chicago feels different than the cities you've been to, you can't pinpoint why, I usually suggest that's all our green space. It really creates a different feel for your city, very invisibly. But the Burnham Plan lays the foundation for very tangible stuff too, like a pier that becomes Navy Pier, a shopping district that becomes a Magnificent Mile, and our Riverwalk, which is still active and ongoing. In fact, you might have noticed this nice big undeveloped section here on the left. We got 63 undeveloped acres in downtown Chicago, believe it or not. We've got 77 neighborhoods here. This will be the 78th, and that's its name, the 78th. I think that's kind of cute. We're building an entire neighborhood from the ground up here. The projected end date for this project is in the late 2030s. That means we got a long time to figure out what it's actually going to be. There's been a lot of stuff thrown at the wall so far, like perhaps a new Red Line station or White Sox Stadium. Although they'd probably have to start winning games in order for that to happen. Although I'm told, new Chicago Pope, White Sox fan. So we'll start winning games now that God's on our side. It just took an act of God to win some games, which is very pathetic. But there are 3 things that this will do for certain, at least at this point in time. We actually just got a new one about 2 weeks ago. The Chicago Fire soccer team will be building their stadium down here and playing as early as 2028. I'll believe it when I see it. But we're also getting a technology sector. They want to build the Silicon Valley, the Midwest, down here in the 78. And we're getting another half-mile of Riverwalk connecting these South Loop and Chinatown neighborhoods, which is the Burnham Plan. So even though we know very little about what the 78 will look like, at least at this point in time, we do know the Burnham Plan will be the main thing actively shaping it as it moves forward, as it actively shapes most things we build here still. And this section of Chinatown the 78 will connect to is called Ping Tom Park. Now, Ping Tom was an immigrant in America, worked his way up in Chicago politics. And back in the day, the left-hand side of the boat looked just like the right-hand side. A lot of train yards, industry, not very attractive. Ping Tom had a great vision of transforming it into the park you see before you today. Unfortunately, he passed away before he could see it completed himself. But the team he worked on it with believed in the idea so much that after his death, they transformed it into this memorial park in his honor. And now it's one of my favorite parks in the city. There's a fitness facility. You can work out in Ping Tom Park in case that deep dish pizza starts getting to you. There's a boat rental spot here on the left where you can rent kayaks, drop in the river, see it up close and personal yourself. They also do boat races. They just had some last weekend. I think they got more coming up at the end of July. That's very fun to come and watch. On the other side of the bridge, there's a playground, as well as the Ping Tom Pagoda coming into view. They do martial arts training, Tai Chi, the occasional free concert down here at the Pagoda. It's also, as you can see, where the Wendella water taxi will drop you off and pick you up. You have that pass. This is our southernmost point down here at the Pagoda. And even if none of those amenities interest you, I still recommend a visit to Ping Tom Park in particular because you got the highways overhead, you're boxed in by trains on 2 or 3 different sides, you got obnoxious tour guides on the river right next door, but despite all of that, you kind of forget you're in Chicago when you're in that park. It's a really nice spot to go and escape the hustle and bustle of the city for a little bit, very serene. So if you need a good spot to get away from it all while you're here, I recommend this is a great spot to do it. And if you're looking for hustle and bustle, nightlife, Chinatown's got a great nightlife. Check out Chinatown Square. It's about 3 blocks away from where we are right now. A very high concentration of Michelin star restaurants, amazing drinks, bakeries, candy shops, souvenir stores, karaoke. One of my favorite Italian beef sandwiches in the city, down here in Chinatown actually. Don't worry, I'll tell you where to get it on the next section of the tour. Wouldn't leave you hanging. Also, as we make our U-turn here in just a moment, you may notice the bridge in front of us. It's a little bit different than our typical bridge. We'll talk about our bridges when we head up the North Branch, but this is a vertical lift bridge. There are very few of these that are still operational in the U.S., although I'm told most are out in Portland. In its current position, it allows trains to cross on the tracks. And when a boat with larger sails needs to get out to Lake Michigan for boating season, or away from it after boating season's over, it lifts up the mechanisms on either side. Still fully operational. despite probably needing a paint job. And typically, our bridge is lift up twice a week, Wednesdays and Saturdays in the spring and fall. It's usually May and October, although recreational boat traffic is up 300% in recent years, which means that's been extended into April and November, just to accommodate the sheer amount of boats coming through. You just missed the site where the Great Chicago Fire broke out. Once we pull forward, it looks like we're waiting on another boat company here. Ah, the Architecture Center. How did I know? It's always them. Just on the opposite side of this power center, there is a radio tower. That is the site where the Great Chicago Fire broke out. Currently, that radio tower is the Chicago Fire Department training facility. So, very ironic that that is where they set up shop. But back in the day, it was the O'Leary Farm. And over the next 3 days, 32 hours after that small spark catches, it slowly spreads, consumes everything we can see on our tour today. 3.5 square miles of downtown Chicago, from Chinatown to Lincoln Park, totally destroyed in the fire. That renders a third of our population homeless, causes an estimated $4 billion in modern-day damages. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871. You can now see that radio tower to the right, 2 blocks just beyond the Marshalls there. Now, the main question on everybody's mind after that fire destroyed Chicago, might be on your mind right now too, how'd the fire start? We're looking for a scapegoat. In this case, a scape cow. Mrs. O'Leary's cow takes the blame. Supposedly, she leaves a lantern in the barn with her cow, Daisy, goes to bed for the night. Daisy kicks that lantern over, spreads into the Great Chicago Fire. You may have already heard this one. It's got its own theme song. However, it's not true. It's just a rumor that got out of control. You might say, it's a full-blown cowspiracy. Had to be looking for a joke or two, you know? Anyway, Chicago reporter who claimed it was true, on his deathbed 1893, admits he made that story up. That's a lie to sell papers. Still, it's a catchy lie. Sells a lot of papers. Keeps getting passed down. Mrs. O'Leary wasn't exonerated by Chicago until 1997. Well over 100 years after he admits he lied, long after it does her any good. But nowadays we know it wasn't the cow. But if it wasn't the cow, who was it? Ready for the Hollywood ending? It has one. We actually weren't the only city on fire October 8, 1871. In fact, there was a series of fires burning all across the Midwest at the exact same time. Now, we don't know this of our fire, but we do have a pretty good idea what caused some of those other fires, and it was, believe it or not, a meteor shower. Rock falling from space, burning up in the atmosphere, catching the ground on fire when it lands. Since those fires happened at the same time as ours, we're so close to them geographically, we figure maybe our fire was the same meteor shower. But we don't know for sure. That's just our best guess. At the moment, we'll probably never know for certain what truly caused the Great Chicago Fire. But it's not just a mystery and a travesty, it's also an opportunity. Chicago is now this blank slate just waiting to be rebuilt. We get a do-over. The first city burnt to the ground. Now the second city can rise from the ashes, bigger and better. And that's where our nickname, the Second City, comes from. You learn one thing in this hour and a half, let it be this. Chicago's not second to any other city. We never have been. First city burned down. Second city is what we rebuilt and all get to enjoy today. That's the origin of that Second City nickname. Architects from all over flooded Chicago to help us build that second city. The architect leading the charge is Daniel Burnham. Burnham's got a great quote I love. He says, "Make no small plans, for they have no magic to stir men's blood. Instead, make big plans, aim high and hope and work." It's exactly what he does. He aims high and works hard. And with his help in 22 years following a fire that destroys everything you can see, we're able to rebuild Chicago big enough to support one of the largest and most influential World's Fairs in American history, the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, also spearheaded by Burnham. We hold that to the south in Jackson Park, where the Museum of Science and Industry is. And in 6 short months, 27 million people from all around the world come through the turnstiles of that World's Fair. So it puts Chicago back on the map and helps us be known for something other than burning down. It also gives us our second nickname. Prior to that World's Fair, we're in a very contentious battle with our older brother New York about who should hold it. New York's winning it first, as they do. Then Chicago pulls ahead, then New York again. This goes back and forth 7 times, until finally Chicago pulls ahead, seals the deal. We're going to hold the World's Fair here. New York's not happy. In fact, they write in one of the newspapers, "You should pay no mind to those windy windbags from that windy city." Always bragging about Chicago. That's the first known usage of the Windy City nickname. It has nothing to do with lake effect wind. It's because we just can't stop bragging about our city. Which I think is still true. And, objectively, 10 times worse than the cow jokes. So I don't care you didn't like it. I like it. They stay in. But Burnham doesn't let this stop him. He keeps building. And by the time we reach 1909, he released another remix coming up here on the right. Art Deco style building, the Old Main Post Office. In the opening sequence of The Dark Knight, Joker ziplines onto the roof of this building, robs a bank, drives a bus through the side. So that's Gotham City Bank right there. But it's also our Old Main Post Office. But recently, the post office has moved out, modern offices have moved in, and with them come a very cool addition. The world's largest private rooftop garden. It's 3.5 acres of space called the Meadow. That comes complete with walking trails, basketball and pickleball courts, a bistro bar, all on the roof of that building. Unfortunately private. So you gotta work there or know somebody who does to get up there. If you know anybody, come find me. Still working on my connection. But I do have good news. World's largest public rooftop garden is also in Chicago. It's Millennium Park. That's above Millennium Station. So we got that one on a technicality too. But all of this on the roof of the Old Main Post Office now makes it a green building. It is LEED certified. It stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. That's another big facet of modern architecture. It's not just about playing nice with your neighbors, but also with the environment too. And here in Chicago, we have more LEED certified buildings than any other city in the U.S. We're quite literally leading America's great charge, which you may not be aware. But that catches up to modern day. Yeah, absolutely. That catches up to modern day from an architectural lens. We're going to go back in time once more, this time historically. Talk about some of the important characters and events of our past that have shaped us into who we are today. And this time we'll go all the way back to the beginning of Chicago. As far as we know, Chicago has always been home to a plethora of Native American tribes, including, but not limited to, the Miami, Illinois, and the Council of Three Flames. This was a formal alliance between the Potawatomi, Ottawa, and Ojibwe tribes. Once again, even the name Chicago comes from a Potawatomi word, so very important part of our past history and culture. The first white people showed up in the 1670s, two French explorers, Marquette and Joliet. They were tasked with finding a connection from the Great Lakes system to the Pacific Ocean. If you know your geography, that doesn't exist. What they found instead was a connection from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico through the Chicago River. Except, not really, because the river back then looked very different than it does now. For starters, the Chicago River was originally 2 feet deep and 4 feet wide. It is now 15 to 20 feet deep and 100 feet wide. It used to flow into Lake Michigan, now flows out of it. Don't worry, we'll talk about that one in depth later. And the other big difference is it didn't connect all the way to the Mississippi River, not yet. You had to take a portage. You would paddle your canoe all the way down to Chicago as far as it would go, then pick it up, carry it 9 days on foot, drop it in the Des Plaines, which will then take you to the Illinois, to the Mississippi, to the Gulf. So, Marquette and Joliet find this connection. They write home to the king, said, "We found it, but you will want to dig a canal so we don't have to carry our canoes." King writes back, says, "Makes sense, but sounds like a lot of work. Based off your reports, a lot of stinky onions. Chicago smells bad. We're going someplace less stinky." So the French leave for New Orleans, which smells better than Chicago? I don't buy it. Anyway, 100 years later is when our first non-native settler shows up. He's known as the father of Chicago. His name is Jean-Baptiste Pointe-du-Sable, a French Haitian man of African descent who sets up shop almost exactly where we started the tour, just on the other side of Michigan Avenue, where the Apple store is now. He does very well for himself, establishes our fur trading industry, and marries a Potawatomi princess named Kitty Hollow. That kicks off all sorts of people flooding Chicago, hoping they can marry a princess too. Over the next 100 years, we go from a population of one single guy to 300,000 people. People are springing Chicago like crazy over that century. When that many people are moving to your city, you're just trying to keep up. You're not thinking sustainably. That means we're building everything out of wood. Our streets are wood, our sidewalks are wood, our bridges are wood, our houses are wood. We're a giant matchstick just waiting to blow that finally lights after a 2-month drought on October 8th, 1871. About 2 blocks to the right of where we are now is the Marina City, also brutalism. 2 very different designs. They're made of the same raw concrete, so they're classified the same way. A little lower to the left is Chicago's Riverwalk. Fairly new addition in the city. Phase 3 finished in 2016. Cost $112 million. The added spots to grab a bite to eat or drink, like the Tiny Town. There's an amphitheater coming up on the left. There are spots to go fishing or dip your kayak in. But my favorite addition with the Riverwalk was a fish hotel. It sounds weird, but we added the spot where fish can hide from predators and boats. And since the 70s, 60 more species of fish have come to the Chicago River. So it's actually doing its job, helping us repair the ecosystem, establish a better relationship to these waterways, which is important. Because unfortunately, we didn't always use them for beautiful architecture boat tours. In fact, the main thing we used this river for was sewage back in the day. So we're trying to do better than that, at the very least. And that's ironic because most of our success is owed to the river and the lake. We've got 20% of the world's liquid freshwater in the Great Lakes system behind us. Very convenient connection to the Midwest, East Coast, even Canada. And the river eventually connects all the way down to the Mississippi and then Gulf of Mexico. So a very convenient spot to meet up and trade back in the day. That's how we got our start, fur trading. In fact, even the name Chicago comes from this river. It comes from the Potawatomi word Escargoa. That means stinkweed. It's a type of onion that grew along our riverbanks before there were buildings here. So, New York's the Big Apple. Chicago is literally the little stinky onion. That's where we get our name from. It's 100% true. But that onion wouldn't exist without the river either. So a very important part of our identity. Following the bridge here on the right is another cool style of architecture. This came after revivalism in the mid-1920s. Merchandise Mart, a great example of Art Deco style architecture. It's got sturdy Indiana limestone as its base material. It's all about verticality. Draws your eyes upward, makes the building seem bigger than it is through those setbacks near the top. Every Art Deco building's competing for your attention, trying to be the biggest and best in the block. And another way it draws your attention in isn't just size, it's also ornamentation. If you look above the windows, you can see gold diamonds up there. The glitz and glam of the roaring 20s coming out in building form. Think Great Gatsby. That's what Art Deco buildings tend to embody. They're all about the opulence of the 20s. We'll talk more about the history behind Art Deco and several other styles in a moment, but first, get those cameras out. On the opposite side of Franklin Street Bridge is a beautiful trophy case of architecture at Wolf Point, where the three branches of the river meet. Take a moment and take this in. First building here I want to point out is on the left. We got a curved glass building, the New Bean building. This was Ferris Bueller's dad's office from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But the curve of that building matches the curve of the river, and so does its greenish-bluish tint. Pays tribute to what's around it. That's contextualism. It's another contextualist building in front of us. A giant stick of deodorant. McDonald's apple pie. A Hot Pocket. Take a pick any one. That's River Point. Its curved entrance and top, also reflecting the curve of the river. And our last contextualist building is this Y-shaped one in front of us, 150 North Riverside. The Y pays tribute to where we are because Wolf Point, where the three branches of the river meet, literally makes a Y if you look at a map of Chicago or get a bird's eye view. So the Y pays tribute to the Y at the Y. That's why. Now, when you make a Y-shaped building, some structural difficulties come with that. And the big one here in Chicago is called sway. We are the Windy City. Get a lot of lake effect wind, which means our taller buildings, or Y-shaped ones, literally sway in that wind. We're going to talk about 3 different methods of sway reduction on the tour today that buildings use to cut back that experience. What this building uses is called inertial slosh dampeners. Inside this building, towards the top, are 12 massive concrete tanks filled with 160,000 gallons of water. When it gets up with a gust of wind, the water in those tanks, naturally,
please do not congregate on them, and please use the handrails. Smoking or vaping on this vessel is unlawful and is not permitted anywhere on board. Flash photography at or near the pilot house is prohibited. Please keep your hands and arms inside the vessel at all times. Interfering with the safe operation of this vessel is illegal and subject to a civil penalty. If you have questions or need assistance, please contact a uniformed crew member. Once again, welcome aboard.
All right, guys, let's stop wasting time. Let's get into your tour. We'll start with this building in front of us. White building, clock tower, all the way at the top. This is the Wrigley Building. It is built with Revivalist style architecture, a popular style from the 1880s to the early 1920s, just following the Great Chicago Fire. Our city's just been destroyed. We're starting to rebuild it. Want to prove to the rest of the world that Chicago is just as beautiful as any place else. We just don't have our own style of architecture to prove that. Europe's got a good style though. So, we copy what Europe's doing, paste it right here in Chicago. The Wrigley Building is based off a cathedral you can still find in Spain. So that's Spanish Revivalism. And on the right, just beyond the bridge, you can also see a building that looks like a French cathedral had a baby with an office building. That's the French Gothic Revivalism style of the Tribune Tower, which is also copying a different European style design and pasting it here. Now, both of these buildings are incredibly beautiful, but they're Europe's beautiful buildings. They don't have much to do with Chicago. Fast forward to modern day, architecturally, we do the exact opposite. We're all about site-specific design called contextualism, buildings that factor in their context. Great examples on the right. Our second tallest building in the city, Trump Tower. Now you can notice it's got 3 terraces going up. Those match the height of surrounding buildings. The first one matches the Wrigley Building we just left. The third one matches the apartment building between those two. And the second terrace matches the Mather Tower, which is the white telescope building across the river. So again, it's 3 terraces match 3 neighbors. But on top of that, it's sandwiched between an all-white building and an all-black building. So this bluish-grayish glass and steel is creating a transitional element between those 2 extremes. Once again, blending all of its surroundings together into a single design. That's why you can't copy and paste like Revivalism anymore. Of a place, for a place, by a place. That's the contextualism model. If you're doing it right, it wouldn't even work 2 blocks away. That's the beauty of this style of design. Now, if by the end of this tour, you are like me, you do want to move here, you might want to move into these buildings. For a studio or 1 bedroom, the listings inside go for $1,300 to $2,000 a month. May not sound cheap depending on where you're from, but for downtown Chicago with a river view, that's the best deal you'll find. I will warn you, these are pie-slice shaped apartments. Kind of hard to put your furniture in those, but you can't beat that deal. You probably recognize them anyway. They're coming up on the right. 2 giant corn cobs, Marina City Towers, iconic apartments from the 60s, and cheap too. But back when they were built in the 60s, not many other apartments downtown, so these are also self-sustainable. If you head inside, you can still find a fully functional grocery and liquor store, movie theater, bowling alley, swimming pool. The parking is on the lower levels. There are restaurants in the House of Blues beneath that. And following the bridge on the right-hand side, you can see where it gets its name. There's an actual functional marina in the basement. You can park a boat here too. You can access all of that from the building. You can also get a better view of the parking situation down here. Cars want to come out the backside twice. Don't worry, both essential. One was a Steve McQueen movie called The Hunter. Another was an Allstate commercial. Yeah, that's done a few years ago. It is some of these John de Valet Park things. So if you ever feel like your job is stressful, remember that. It'll probably do worse. Left-hand side, we got a small concrete building with 5-5 at the top. 5-5 West Wacker. We call it the Danny DeVito building because it's short, stubby, and between 2 supermodels. It is a brutalist building, which doesn't have to do with its brutal, boxy appearance like you might think. It's the material it's made of. Brutalism comes from the French term béton brut. Pardon my bad French. That means raw concrete. In fact, the corn cops just saw